In 1991, Sega released its first real Final Fight contender at home, Streets of Rage, for the Sega Genesis. While it was no match for its rival visually, it played great and had an absolutely killer soundtrack. It wasn't without its flaws, and the small cartridge size meant we'd need to wait until its sequel before we got the kind of visual pizzazz to match the rest of the game. Still, for what it was when it was a satisfying experience that scratched that itch for a good brawler on the platform. But what if you didn't have a Genesis or a Mega Drive at the time? Where did you get your Streets of Rage fix? Luckily for Sega fans, there were 2 more versions of it produced. Both the Game Gear and Master System received their very own Streets of Rage, and surprise, they were very different from one another. Minigames at the time were often just slightly different on the 2 platforms, but the developer Ancient sought to change that here. In this episode, we will be taking a look at the 2 8-bit versions of Streets of Rage, go over the content and the quality, and crown a definitive winner overall. Did the handheld version stand tall with its stronger color palette, or did the aged Master System prove to be the better choice? Let's take a look and find out. Both the Game Gear and Master System versions were developed by Ancient, the studio Yuzo Koshiro founded with his family. They were also responsible for the original 8-bit Sonic titles. While you'd think that these two would play similar, you'd be dead wrong. They both have similar control schemes, of course, but how they feel and execute comes off as stark contrasts to one another. You move around much faster in the Game Gear version, but attack much slower. On the Master System, you move slower but attack faster, leading to a much more natural feeling beat 'em up. Shockingly, the Game Gear completely omits the grapple combo, so once you lock up with an enemy, you simply have the 2 choices of tossing him over your shoulder or giving him a backdrop. The Master System retains the grapple combo, which can then be finished up with one of the 2 throws. This creates another big issue for the Game Gear. Because you move so fast and can only really use the throws, that's where a huge percentage of the gameplay is focused. In fact, so dominant does the throw become, it's less a beat 'em up and more a wrestling game. To pile on the Game Gear negatives, it's also missing 3 of the stages from the Genesis version. Adam is nowhere to be found, and the police backup is replaced by a rare S item that instantly kills everything on the screen when you touch it. The Master System's gameplay and content is much more satisfying, however. Adam is here, you get 8 stages to fight across, and you have a special backup move anytime you want it, though you do have to pause the game to first activate it. What that all boils down to is that the Master System version is much closer to the Genesis release in content and gameplay. The lone bright spot for the Game Gear in this regard is that it did have 2-player support, but it required 2 systems, 2 games, and the gear-to-gear link cable to pull it off. Another area where the 2 games are quite different were in their graphical presentations. The Master System version is quite colorful and extremely well representative of the 16-bit visuals. The sprites are a tad smaller, there's some flicker here and there, and it doesn't scroll quite as smoothly all the time, but it's still a nice looking game. On the other hand, the Game Gear version is super zoomed in, the screen doesn't move particularly well, and it seems less colorful if you can believe it. Even on the small screen of the portable itself, everything suffers less detail and just doesn't look as well done. I wouldn't call it bad looking, it's just that the Master System version clearly does it better. In a way, it's kinda refreshing that Ancient went this route. Instead of rehashing the same 2 versions, they clearly felt they could do more with the Master System's increased resolution, and the end result is a visually superior game in just about every way. I'm usually quite pleased with what the Game Gear could do, but in this instance, the Master System schooled its younger sibling in just how nice 8-bit graphics could be. The music of the Sega Genesis release remains some of my favorite for the platform. It was a great mix of dance and environmentally inspired tunes that went really well with the content. Fortunately, both the Game Gear and Master System do an excellent job here. No joke, it's amazing just how well this stuff sounds. No hard-edged PSG here, most of this stuff sounds great and goes with the action quite well. The Genesis remains king of course, but both 8-bit versions deserve a pat on the back for their performances. I really wish I could tell you these games are great and recommend that you play them both ASAP, but I can't. They both have serious issues. I mentioned previously some of the differences in gameplay and content, but it goes a bit further than that. They both have hitbox issues. Many times you can be hit well outside the sprite, and worse, being knocked down doesn't stop the onslaught of damage from enemies hitting you multiple times. In some cases, you can soak up an entire life's worth of damage being hit without a period of invincibility or being knocked back. In the Master System version, there also seems to be a bug sometimes when you try and throw an opponent. Instead of launching him across the screen, you just go into the throw animation and the enemy breaks free. This happens a lot and usually leads to you being hit afterwards. This inexact gameplay leads to damage you otherwise wouldn't have taken if the mechanic would work as it should. The Game Gear version commits an even more egregious sin, however. The basic combo attack is so slow, it's basically useless. It's so much easier to just toss your enemy than to stand there and wait the second that it takes before your damn attack will start. Some of these inconsistencies can be adjusted to with practice, so there is still some fun to be had with them both. But let me be 100% clear here, the Genesis game plays better than them both by a mile. There simply is no comparison whatsoever. So, is the verdict to avoid them both at all cost? No, definitely not. Both these can still be fun diversions should you have a Game Gear or Master System readily available, or you don't have access to the Genesis version. Fortunately, the 16-bit original is available in a wide assortment of formats. It's in nearly all of Sega's Genesis collection compilations, it's on the Genesis Mini, and it's available on just about every modern platform you can think of. That kinda leaves the majority of you who this will appeal to as the folks that played them as a kid. The ones that dumped countless hours into them, learning their nuances and adjusting to their quirks. You guys likely love them and feel they were more than adequate for what they offered. For me, I find them both to be a curiosity, sorta like a side story to a much bigger and better experience. If I had to recommend one over the other, the Master System version is the superior of the two. It looks better, plays better, and has more content. Even if you want to play Streets of Rage on your Game Gear, I advise skipping the official version for it and play the Master System ROM via the EverDrive. You'll thank me later. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.